Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for U Sports Football. Me and Tom are back on the mics with a new installment of the Exit Meeting series. We have taken our talents down Highway 6 to Tom's old school, a place that we were at not too long ago for a little bike ride I had to do to eat a little crow on a missed bet I placed last year. But we'll get into the team we're talking about, the very special guest we have to talk about his team, and so much more. But first, Tom, how the heck are you doing, my friend?
I could not be doing any better, my man. I've got an incredible chance to introduce somebody that is very, very important to me and remind all the listeners at home the accolades that this man has. He is a three-time All-Canadian receiver. Up until recently, he was the all-time receptions and receiving yards leader at a school, Laurier University. He is a combined 7-time Yates Cup champion. He is a 2-time OUA Coach of the Year, 1-time U Sports Coach of the Year, and a 3-time Vanier Cup champion. My former head coach, Coach Stefan Ptaszek, joins the program here. Coach P, it is such an honor to have you on here. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Tom. I got to hire you as my promotional guy. Let's go.
You'd be competing with a lot of guests we have on here, Coach. Tom is a wanted man. And Coach, this is the third time in about a week that we've got to see you, which is such a privilege on our end. A week ago, it was seeing you just after your spring camp practice with us doing the bike ride that I had to do, betting against your team last year against my Griffins. And then we just saw you yesterday finishing up a really competitive scrimmage you did at Waterloo with Coach Bertoya's team. And I'm sure we'll talk about the day that was, how spring camp's been going, but sort of connecting with your relationship with Tom, thinking about your time at McMaster, which has spanned quite a while now. I hate to say, Coach, but, I'm right there with you with the bald head, but, yours is a bit more aged in terms of your time in this league, Coach. You're getting into one of the OG figures. What is the difference? Because at that spring game, there was a lot of young kids. We were kind of spotting and trying to play like, oh, which is that high school helmet? And which is that high school helmet? What's the biggest thing that you're noticing at this stage in your career with high school kids coming into your program versus, now to age Tom and myself, 15, 16 years ago, when young Tom Sterling is coming into Hamilton to join the McMaster Marauders? What are some of the things, if anything, maybe 18-year-old, 19-year-old young men are still just 18-year-old, 19-year-old men, but are there any things you're noticing here in 2026 that's a little different, or just the things that have changed in the time since Tom's days of donning the maroon?
I think Generation Z is a little different than anything we've seen before, and don't get me started on them, but I think the camaraderie, the skills, all the things that football gives young men is more valuable than it's ever been. It's more unique. It's more rare. Unconditionally going after a goal and putting your personal objectives aside for the team and just plowing through is a rare asset that will serve young men well wherever they go. And you don't get it as often in this world. And so I think football plays an ever critical role on the development of these Generation Zs on their phones. And we got a ton of throwback young men like Tom, and his era was slightly different than my era, and lots of everything evolves and gets better. Concussion protocols, safe tackling, all that stuff. But the core values have remained pretty consistent, and they're harder to find in this brave new world. And so I think keeping that football locker room as similar as it's been over the decades, and the friendships are unique, and they seem to survive the decades afterwards better than anything else you do. I think the world needs that more than ever now.
Certainly. And I love the fact that we started off with the youth and obviously talking about Generation Z, because if there's one thing about your team, it's that you've got some young players, and certainly something that's more and more exciting as years go on, because those young players, more game experience and more time to learn the playbook and learn everything. But I want to just take a second here to talk about the people who are molding those young players and the rest of your coaching staff, because while you certainly have the illustrious list that I just went through previously here, you've got some of the best minds around you as well. Jamie Barisi coaching up quarterbacks. You got Mike Warner, who was one of the best old linemen back in his days, helping out with running backs and fullbacks. Yep. But even having your two coordinators in Adam Grandy and Chris Hopkins, I would love to just get your feedback or your feelings on the growth and development of somebody like a Chris Hopkins, who came in as a positional coach, has risen into that offensive coordinator, and has, in my opinion, really stepped in well and done a hell of a job being in that offensive mind yourself, can you speak a little bit about what he has meant to this program and how the rest of your coaching staff as well has just kind of grown up?
I mean, they're all quality human beings first and good football people second. The one thing that unites all of them is they care tremendously about the Marauder student athletes, and certainly at the front of that room, Coach Hopkins is all heart, and his work at the line of scrimmage and his work in the community and recruiting and getting young men to our program. He's played an integral part. We got him our COVID recruiting classes, which are kind of our fourth and fifth year kids last year. Are not, it's not the world that we wanted to recruit in, and Hoppy's been the kind of the recruiting coordinator and evolved into the offensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons, and the young men that we brought in certainly reflects his hard work and energy and enthusiasm. He's taught me tons. I mean, hovering on the gas pedal offensively and making sure we take a ton of vertical shots is definitely a Chris Hopkins thing. He's worked brilliantly with Jamie Parisi to squeeze out the professor's knowledge. He's forgotten more about football than Coach Hopkins and I will ever know. His student athletes, he's got a great balance, particularly with that offensive line room. Tom there. They know that he loves them, and he yells at them every single day. And so watching those relationships evolve and how balanced that seems to be at the line of scrimmage is invaluable. Truthfully, the unicorns on this planet, especially now with portals and the U.S., are line of scrimmage players. And so there aren't enough of them out there to feed the 26, 27 U Sport teams that are there. And so your ability to get more than your fair share is critical to surviving. And so Chris is at the forefront of doing all of those things.
I love that we brought up Coach Hopkins, because that was one of my favorite things from getting to be at that scrimmage yesterday, because Coach Hopkins is someone who I have been a fan of since his time at Carleton, when he had developed really the last true strong running game they had with Nathan Carter, Joshua Ferguson, and what his impact has been thus far, and kind of seeing him get to work with yourself. And it's fascinating you saying him being the one taking those vertical shots, being the one to speak that into existence. Because one of the things I thought was really impressive with your team yesterday was starting to see that run game really look quite strong. And no doubt that's a function of the work he's been able to do, but especially the work he's been able to do with this young offensive line. Because just sticking with that piece on the youth, it is a group that, contrary to what people think, I am allowed to say nice things about McMaster. And I honestly was, watching your team last year, like you could see, especially with that group that had gone to form together through the ups and the downs of being a first year group working together, and then getting that much more experience, where it really feels like, in addition to some of the other great pieces on both sides of the ball, all 3 phases of the ball, there's a real gelling that's going on right now with that youth, but especially on the offensive side, and seeing that run game develop, where we've seen your team be able to put up remarkable aerial stats with a few quarterbacks in there, obviously going back to Keegan's days and even Dewey before then. That possibility of a McMaster team, like it was during Tom's years, with not just guys like Kyle Quinlan who can throw the ball left, right, and center and do some great stuff with his feet, but hand the ball off some of those horses in the backfield. That's where this program, McMaster, along with great defenses, becomes a team that contends for not just the province, but the national level. What's it been like seeing his impact with this young offense, seeing that run game really look like it's starting to develop into something strong?
Yeah, his focus this spring has been to continue developing our outside zone game and get guys moving a little laterally before we pick a hole. He now has a stable of third-year backs that are as good as any in the country, and there's 4 or 5 guys that we trust carrying the ball. He does a really good job of formation up. Nate Dankers is one of the best tight ends, I think, in the country. Nate's studying in France this semester, so we got through spring without him. But Coach Hopkins and different personnel groups, different formations, and just running core stuff with 1,000 different looks is actually exactly what we try to do in the pass game. We don't have a ton of plays, but we learn to run them in several different looks in several different ways. And to take that kind of philosophy and apply that at the line of scrimmage, the 5 guys up front, we keep it simple for them, and then we complement them with different edge support and different looks and different motions to try to get them a slight competitive advantage and a slight angle advantage. And that's the difference between plowing for 4 and bouncing for 14. And so we've definitely seen some really good progress this spring. Both scrimmages, that core outside zone game, and when we have numbers, we're going to hold our own up front, and it's going to complement and make everything's downhill and with the wind if you can establish the run game.
Certainly. Now, you talk about this team, you talk about the makeup of this team, something that we're really excited about. Obviously, going into last year, we're talking, everybody's top of mind is Keegan's leaving. What's that mean for this Marauder team and everything else? But the person that I was the most excited about, and the group that I was the most excited about, was that quarterback room, and specifically Luke Thalman. Because what he was able to do, especially in the back half of the season, and how he really started to come alive, finding some of those deep threats and just showcasing what he was able to do. Maybe he's not ripping it out, 60-yard bombs or whatever else, but in the offense that you and Coach Hopkins designed, you don't need to be doing that. The occasional deep shot where Aiden Nemeth goes down and is able to do his thing, obviously that helps out a lot, but I thought that his growth and development last year really was outstanding to see and allowed you guys to get up to where you finished ultimately at 4-4. Can you talk a little bit about Luke? Obviously, we'll get into it. He might have a bit of a different title going into this year, but last year, Luke Thalman, and then obviously Barisi in there as well as that kind of 1-2 punch. But what were your quarterback rooms like last year that helped you get into that?
Yeah, oddly, they're not related, but they're both Barisis. At the core of that quarterback room, being very consistent at a high level, is Coach Jamie Barisi. And so working with Dewey and Keegan and the quarterbacks in the last 5 to 10 years, there's the standard of care and the quality amongst all of them. That's a direct reflection of their coach. And so mechanically, he keeps them rock solid, schematically, and making sure the reads are crystal clear. It's all him. Thalman is one of the brightest, fastest thinking pre-snap reads are dead nuts. His post-snap, following his protocols and getting through. Quinlan and all the guys were also good at it, but I don't know that I've worked with someone that's as good at it and as fast at it as Luke Thalman. He wants to be an analytics dude, and his problem solving he does in real time so fast. And so I think he's unique. I always bugged him. He's the best backup quarterback in the world because he needs one rep and then he completely understands the concept and has it for life. Most quarterbacks need a dozen just to get used to the concept, not him. And so that skill, I didn't want to bias to put him in a spot where he's a permanent backup, and we didn't. But unique kid, and that the coach of the room is airtight, rock solid. And so everybody was, what are we going to do without Keegan? When the answer is the same thing we always do. And yeah, everybody brings a little bit different things to the table, and squeezing out what that quarterback likes to do is something that Hoppy, Jamie, and myself take a lot of pride in. The offense, you don't have an offense that you plug kids into. You learn about your kids and you evolve the offense to complement their skill set. And I think we do a very good job of that in the quarterback room.
And Lucas was looking phenomenal yesterday, throwing the ball around in some, at times, pretty precarious conditions, and not just having to throw into the wind, but as you no doubt know better than Tom and I, as a former skilled player, but sometimes when that wind is to your back, it becomes even more treacherous, especially with those winds yesterday in Waterloo. I wanted to switch to the other side of the ball and talk about what Coach Grandy's been doing with your defense there in the past 2 years now. Obviously, someone that I know back from my time at Guelph. Really great to see what he was able to do, continuing to develop as a coach with Western, come sort of do his homecoming, being back in Hamilton, Golden Horseshoe guy, and with a defense where, the last year or two, seeing a lot of turnover from a core group that was so massive in that 2019 team that you guys had. Like, I always think of Josh Cumber just from that, the great interception that he had against, I'm forgetting the receiver, the 6'5" dude at Western, this little Josh Cumber just getting up there, making the plays. But your Drake Bodie's, your Ryan Leaders, like all these guys, I'm missing names, tons of names, but those core guys that made that year, in addition to having a guy like Andreas Duick on the offensive side, make that team so special, and starting to see the sort of last vestiges of that defense graduate out. I think it was Carter Blad that we were, I was point out to Tom on the sideline. I'm like, oh, that's, and Tom was like, yeah, it's Blad. I'm like, oh, it's so cool to see him there still with the team. So what's it been like seeing Grandy take over, all the while kind of seeing slowly those last core pieces from that, what part of what made that 2019 team so formidable and taking out Western in the Yates Cup, seeing the sort of last of those guys graduate out to see what like a true Adam Grandy defense, and as you said as well, kind of getting those, being that post COVID recruiting period, having that sort of cleared out. What's it been like seeing him work with that side of the ball?
Yeah, it's similar to the previous coordinator. Adam doesn't let the offense dictate to him what they're going to do. They attack and they try to get after it, and so I'm glad to see that hasn't changed. Each coordinator, I think, puts the onus or a lot of the detail at the level of the defense they know best. And so Coach Brady was a defensive back guy, and his detail and his attention was from the back end down. Adam's a linebacker dude. And so it's different. It's kind of from the front up that a lot of his stuff is based. And especially in the secondary, Blad and the guys last year were adjusting to, and it was different for them. I'm glad Carter's going to be a wonderful coach because, frankly, being exposed to both those kind of philosophies has been awesome. As the head guy, I love its attack and dictate what's going on, not take it on the chin. And Adam's going to do that for sure. The evolution, I still got Anthony Sustanovic to hold the fort. I know he's got a CFL aspirations and he's going to run that out. But if that doesn't work out for him, having him back for a fifth year will be very good. The passing of the torch, and Tom can speak to this. The vets pass on a whole bunch of important Marauder values, so those stay consistent throughout. My favorite, especially on the defensive side, is a talented young guy comes in. The vets don't mark territory and be pissy with the good freshmen. The vets pull them aside and know, hey, you're going to help us win a few this year, and so you got to do this drill better than that. That was crap, and they work with him and get him up to speed, and they know that it's going to be at their expense eventually, and they don't care because they want to win. And so I think that's very unique. I think that's a McMaster thing that I'm very proud of, and so that hasn't gone away. And the imprint that the Noah Halletts, the Carter Blads have had on that secondary. It sticks with a Sean Underhill and the guys that are holding the fort. At the line of scrimmage, Dom Lamani had like a whole Ryan Leader and Owen Hubert and those guys. When Dom comes in, they know he can play and they don't let him goof around and they get him locked in and they push him. And he's taken over and doing that with our young guys that are coming in as well. And so that defensive group, it's going to be young. I do think if we can keep our D-line healthy, Chuck off the edge is a freak and so fast and getting pressure after the quarterback. We don't have to blitz. We will when Adam feels like it, but we can get some pressure. I joked, oh gosh, 2 off the same side on play 2 of practice. That's a new record, Adam. I've never waited that long for 2 off the same side, and so Coach Hopkins and I have been scratching our head as we have to deal with stuff in spring. As the head coach, I love that we force ourselves to deal with those things all the time, so that our young men are used to it a little bit. A base 40 front to run an outside zone we didn't see very often.
Well, we were talking with Coach Grandy yesterday at the scrimmage, and he goes, "Yeah, this young guy, I really like him. He's kind of like a boundary half, maybe a will linebacker type. I really wanted to make sure that we were showcasing him." I go, "Okay, great." So he goes, "Well, so yeah, to showcase him, I put him at boundary half, and then I sent him off the edge, and he got a sack, along with the other defensive end and the will linebacker that went into the B gap." So we saw exactly like you were talking about there, which is just outstanding to see. But you talk about some of these guys, and on that defense, to me, one of the most impressive, obviously, Chuck Wally is going to be an all-Canadian. Well, like he's outstanding, but is one Isaiah Shields. He was a guy that went from the offense, came over to the defensive side, has played Sam linebacker, but if you're really watching that defense and you're saying, I don't think Sam linebackers play 15 yards off the ball, almost as like another free safety type. And then you have somebody who's got a ball sense and has the ability to lay the boom, coming downhill, marking guys and being a part of that. And then even going into those one-on-one series and seeing him rush off the edge, reminded me back in the day of maybe a little Shane Beaton, Johnny Negleka type, but seeing him and that growth and development, and again, a testament to you and your coaching staff by looking at a young man and saying, you could be a decent running back, but we have a need at linebacker, we have a need on defense, and we think that we could grow you into what's going to be, I'm sure, an all-star, all-Canadian aspect. Talk a little bit about Isaiah Shields and that kind of transition going into that.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah was one of the best running backs in Southern Ontario as a senior from BT, Bishop Tonus, and that was one of the better football teams in the province. Dad's like legendary St. Mary's, Blake Nill, secondary player, and I think both of his boys, frankly, are two of the best football players in the province, and both I think are going to be tremendous defensive players at the U Sport level. Isaiah, his coverage skills he could be our starting weak side or strong side half. His ability to read defenses, he could play free safety. The fact that his physical skills and his timing on blitzes and all the things that you do in the box have improved immensely. And again, with Coach Grandy and being a linebacker dude, watching that relationship grow and him develop those skills is very helpful. I would compare him, and I think he's tracking to be Nick Shorthill, which I think is. Nick was a force right out of the gate, and Nick, the edge timing and stuff, it came to him very naturally. But when Isaiah gets that stuff timed up and he gets after the quarterback, and then watching him lock down our number 3, because that's a battle. If the Sam linebacker is a box player, my number 3 had better be able to create separation in man-to-man, and with Isaiah playing, that's not the case, and we've been dead-ended a number of times in spring because he's the unique combination of he's got the coverage skills. I think he's an East-West Bowl candidate this year, and so I think he's going to show the nation. We, as an league, screwed up and didn't separate the Sam and the All-Star voting last year, and I think Mr. Shields is an All-Star if you do it the way we've done it for 25 straight years, where the Sam is separated from the other two. For whatever reason, in our busy time, we just lumped all 3 linebackers together and took the top 3 vote getters and didn't have a Sam go into the process, which Mr. Shields was hurt by that, because I don't know that anybody had a better Sam linebacker season than him last year. And so I'm pumped to watch. He's as motivated for this East-West Bowl that's coming up. We got 5 Marauders going to that this year, and we had 6 last year. So I think my guys have represented and are doing some great work in their off seasons, and I'm pumped to see them go. Lamani's joining them from the D line. I got Cote and Quinn Cassidy going from the O line, and then who else do I have going? I'm missing one, having my senior moments, but it's a very good group. It's Mr. Dankers. Nate is at 6'5", 2 whatever, is going to be a very strong CFL candidate.
Well, I mean, the league screwed up too, because Tom and I still haven't gotten our all-star votes yet. So I mean, we're still, I don't know. I've moved recently. Maybe it got lost in the mail. We're still waiting on that. And I mean, that Sam positions we'll talk about all the time is really that just piece that unlocks a defense's true potential and bringing together the pass and the run. I want to talk a little bit more about last year and kind of thinking of what those steps are that you want to take for this year. I can't help but, laugh. And it was fun seeing yesterday, of course, the defensive battle of your guy and Coach Grandy. But of course, with K-Mac on the other side, and that will have fire is such a staple of K-Mac's defenses. And just thinking about all those battles from those early 2010s with my Griffins and your Marauder teams that were so tightly competitive, and then hearing the name and a guy like Short Hills, and just giving me PTSD. So let's move to the modern Marauders, because you had a season last year where you start that game with that game at York, and it's this kind of, a credit to the schedule makers if it was intentional, and kind of having the Keegan face off against his former team in your Marauders' first game of the season, and all these expectations for that York team. And meanwhile, your sort of plucky underdog Marauder team going into that game is tick for tat with them, comes right down to the wire. You're on the goal line to be able to win a game, have the potential to win, just come that short. Queens, obviously, the juggernaut they were last year and getting the job done, taking out Laurier. That's a tough team. You had to obviously face them in the playoffs as well. Just a team where was just playing at as high level as anyone in the OUA. But then, you obviously take care of business against Guelph, and we mentioned Chuck Wally's name. I think him more than anyone I have to blame for having to do that bike ride, because he absolutely demolished the box play for Guelph on that one. Take care of business against U of T and Waterloo. The offense really coming together against Carleton. But then obviously, teams like Windsor with just that stellar defense and a heck of a run game, and really Western as well. That defense at times was a bit vulnerable, but what Ethan Dolby did last year, the numbers he was able to put up. So I guess my question, thinking about last year for your team and sort of what the step is that you envision or hoping your team takes, is a team that took care of business of all those teams, as Tom and I talk about, within that same tier, if you will, like that team that even if you ended up being maybe a bit ahead of where we thought you were preseason, the way the team gelled, it was like, okay, yeah, this team is right there with sort of that middle class of the OUA, which is so deep. What is it that you're thinking your team needs to take to be able to take that step, to be able to compete with those Lauriers, Queens, Westerns, even a Windsor team that have really been like the class of OUA football for the last number of years, especially when it starts on the defensive end, with as strong as those defenses have been with those clubs?
No doubt. I think at the core, our line of scrimmage play was in the middle tier, and that means your margins are pretty tight. I think the top OUA teams, you look at the best line of scrimmage, D lines, O lines. That's going to be almost the exact same list of teams when you're talking about the teams that are most competing for the Yates Cup at the highest level. And so at the core, I think this year we're really excited, particularly on O-line. Our floor, our 5th, 6th, 7th O linemen are much better than we've been having in previous years. I think our ceiling's improving as well, but the floor of that O line is going to be significantly better. That run game and establishing that in the margins and a quarter more second in the pocket for a QB is night and day different. And so last year, I do think we moved the ball against everyone. The exception would be that Queens secondary. And if Mac has an advantage on anybody, we can establish some oxygen with our quick passing game and doing some things in the pass game to stay with some of the big boys. But the two Queens halfbacks and their core secondary was as good as I've seen in a long time. And so that advantage we did not have when we faced them. So we were a Windsor upset in week 9 that prevented us from hosting Ottawa in the first round as opposed to going to Queens. And that's the hardest matchup for my guys and us. This year, I think the margins are better. I think we are going to be able to, in spurts, compete with anybody at the line of scrimmage. And then our skill guys, I think, are very good. And so even if we are taking a little water on up front, we're going to be where we need to be. The Windsor game is week 1, so we'll see. And I do think that that Solomon and the boys, we missed on a couple early posts, and we did get behind them, and we had some opportunities to make plays. But the Guelph team, who the week before had beaten Windsor by a couple, I think the major difference is when we went to the 80-yard post, we got it against Guelph, and we missed it both times against Windsor. And the ability to make some big plays obviously impacts the outcome of some football games. To bridge the gap, I don't think it's anything magical. I think it's hard work. I think we had another great winter workout. I think we put on 5 pounds of muscle across the board. I think we had the most robust spring we've had in a number of years, with 2 controlled scrimmages and 15 full practices. We got to have a great summer and keep building. And I do think in the OUA ceiling is not as high as it's been. With Laurier's quarterback transferring out, with Western, I mean, the turnover there and the seniors that have moved on. The Queens gets their senior kid back. I think perhaps they may be preseason the favorite. We'll see. We'll see where we are Windsor week 1. It's coming.
Cannot wait for it. But you talk about, and of course, as 2 former offensive linemen, we got to call out some of the names of these big boys. But obviously, there's a number of things that are happening here. You've got some competitions that are going on, like you said, that 5, 6, even 7th O lineman there is really stepping up and creating some of those battles. But with a core of Adam Woods, Quinn Cassidy, and Christian Cote, regardless of wherever they play on the line, that is the top 3, or some of the best 3 that you can have in the entirety of the OUA. We were watching this yesterday at that Waterloo scrimmage, and we saw Adam reach a one tech on an outside zone faster and better than I think I've ever seen anybody else do it. And when you go up to him afterwards and we say, "Hey man, like that was really great." What he goes, "That's just reps and repetition." And especially as a young man like that who's going into his third year, but is a 3-year starter on that offensive line, that is leaps and bounds more than anybody else in that position who might be in their third year, might be, excited about an opportunity, but without those reps, Adam has a massive advantage on that. Quinn with his versatility, and honestly, Christian Cote for me is one of the top guys in the entirety of the OUA, if not U Sports. I think he will push for all-star status, all-Canadian status, regardless of wherever you put him. And you saw it last year with dealing with some injuries where you had him at guard, you bumped him out of tackle, and then you bumped him back in depending on what happened here. And I don't think the production kind of went down at all. So just a testament to the big boys up front and what they're able to do, and cannot wait to see how they grow and mature going into this season as well.
Yeah, Adam's my favorite recruit story, because nowadays the freshmen can participate a little bit in spring, and Adam's a Hamilton boy, so he would be coming down the mountain to do movement sessions with Hoppy in January before he comes to campus. And so in high school, you have this wonderful set of tools that you've used to be one of the best high school players in the country, and some of those tools are going to betray you. The transition to university is figuring out which of those tools still apply when there are no weak high school players on the field. It's all pretty high caliber guys. And so Adam, remember vividly in January, watching him in a movement session going, wow, the kid's strong. And wouldn't it be great if we had a center play pretty early in his career? The counters, the change of direction stuff, he doesn't do well enough yet. So I don't know that he'll start in first year. But Woodsy, hearing that in January before he comes to campus in August, has 6 months to address some of those things and get more comfortable. And yeah, when we had the same conversation in August, you're like, no, the counters he's doing better on, and the engineer is brilliant, and deciphering zone blitzes and calling the whole O-line and keeping them on task, he was born to do. And so all those high school helmets that you see and our ability to invest in them 6 months before training camp starts is, I think, really it's safer that way. They get acclimatized over a longer period of time, and they're more likely to impact and get in the uniform in year one. And Adam's a perfect example of that. As long as he's my quarterback, all 5 guys are going to be very much on task.
It was honestly, it was great being at the scrimmage, great getting to talk to just like some of the guys and the coaches, but, getting to meet Woods was awesome. And to that play that Tom was alluding to, he comes over, I'm like, dude, that's like possibly the hardest block an O-line, especially at center, you made that look so easy. It was really awesome to see. And Coach, I want to sort of ask about, it was great again getting to kind of hear the messaging you had for the team at the breakdown, and that talk about what a good spring it was, and how committed everyone was through January workouts and being able to add that 5 pounds that you mentioned, and how sharp they were looking on the field. What is it for you as a coach? As you mentioned, now you got to have a great summer. What are some of the things that you do as a coach with your program once you now have a bit less control over your players, which I'm sure, if you and I had hair, we'd be pulling it out, because of that fear of like, okay, guys, it's hard to build something up. It's super easy to tear it down and to make that all kind of go to crap. What are some of the scaffolds that your coaching staff, your program sets up for your players that even though, it's harder to control them during the summertime, they're going into exams. I love that was a big emphasis for you, because we know year in, year out for all these programs, that's where, unfortunately, hey, why isn't so-and-so on a roster this year? Well, turns out he failed all his classes. What are those things that you do as a program to try to help as best you can when you're a bit more hands-off and have less control over your players to make sure they're not losing all that progress they've made winter through spring?
Yeah, and you do have to pick your battles, because you don't get unlimited time with them. The hardest position on the field to play is quarterback, and so establishing captain's throws and quarterback throws My quarterback room will have to get us their work schedules and when they have the most convenient times. Typically a Sunday afternoon, especially with a McMaster spring throw. I mean, I worked at UBC. If we got 12 guys to a throw with Mike O'Connor, we're like, wow, this is great. But the Sunday throws will be north of 50. And everybody's there, and getting that quarterback meaningful reps all summer so that the dots that we've connected in spring stay connected all the way to August. That's a big one. And so of all the positions that we can focus on, making sure whether it's a Wednesday night and a Sunday, we've making sure that quarterback room is continuing to progress. So that's one shortcut for us. Our strength program and the accountability piece, I think we've done a really good job that the majority of the accountability doesn't come from my strength coach and me. It comes from their peer group. And so Team Builder is the app they use and mandatory getting your lifts into Team Builder so that we see it. And we do check-ins throughout the summer and try to do some fun things with videos, et cetera, just to make sure that the guys are cross-pollinated and communicating and showing each other that they're doing the work. Each team has a feel and some characteristics, and I mentioned it after the game. I do think that this group of young men, they work hard when everybody's watching, and they were up for both scrimmages, but they work hard when no one's watching, which is a unique skill. And so as a collective, they've done a very good job of holding themselves accountable. And this summer it's a long summer. We try to do especially with our big guys, help with summer jobs. If the only summer job you have is in the sun, like lifting like cement blocks all day, it's damn near impossible to get into the weight room at 5 o'clock after a shift and do your core stuff. So whenever possible, and there's tons of camp jobs and campus things that maybe you're at least in an air conditioning office for the day, and that helps with some of your training goals and where you want to get. But this isn't the NCAA. There aren't NIL deals that are going to set you up for decades later. These young men got to get to work, got to progress and get ready for a semester in the fall, and school is the priority. And so trying to complement all of those challenges and get our football team ready for another good run is slightly different every year. But those are our major. There's where we try to support to get through the summer.
Mm-hmm. A question that I had for you here, talking about just more of your experiences as a coach, as a player. Obviously, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, you have had a lot of opportunities to win a lot of things. And while there's a number of nuggets that I've kept in my head after the things that you have said, one of my absolute favorites are individual awards are like square pegs and circle holes. They don't fit in football. It just doesn't make a lot of sense here. But when you're looking at a team, obviously, you have a number of championship caliber teams under your belt here with the Marauders and outside of that, whatever. There's been questions that even I've been asked, being a part of the 2011, 2012, and 2014 teams in particular, obviously winning. And what are some of the similar characteristics? How can you tell a championship team? And for myself, it was very hard to kind of quantify because my experience in all three of those seasons and all of my time at McMaster with you was putting your head down and going to work. And you're preparing for a York or a Waterloo the exact same way that you prepare for a Western Montreal or Laval, because you have a tried, tested, and true kind of way that you do things. And it's how you were able to get into that championship series. So why would you change it? But is there a particular feel to a team? You know, it's obviously not a play calling thing, because with Kyle Quinlan at quarterback, you're throwing whatever you want anywhere on the field and making those reads. With a Marshall Ferguson, especially with a shoulder that had an injury, when you're not throwing as many 60 Oaklands as maybe you would with a Quinlan, but obviously off of a run game, we're still able to get back to the dance and everything else. Is there an underlying factor in those championship teams that you can recreate, or is it just a unique experience every time?
Yeah, I mean, more than any other sport, football is a collection of 5 years of recruiting. On basketball, a stud freshman is that starts is 20% of your team. Like it's 1/5. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Or sorry, yeah. And so for the collection of 5 great years and support from all levels of those classes, you can see those things coming. And to your point, Tom, the environment we're always trying to create is you're having so much fun, you barely notice how hard you're working. You're surrounded by, and you're so invested. The days are long and you hit the pillow exhausted, but somehow the months and years fly by. And we're trying to get in that sweet spot all the time. As you get to a spot where you've got 5 classes of guys that are bought in and committed, the dominoes start to fall, and the relationships and the fun. I think 50-50 games aren't 50-50 if you're a tight knit group, and so. I don't think there's any special formula or secret. It is 5 consistent hard years of recruiting and stay healthy, get on a run, and off you go. And the 50-50 games, your best friends in the world are shoulder to shoulder. You don't lose those coin tosses as often as you used to when you're in that environment. So we're this third year class that's going into their 4th year, I think, was one of our best. It's the first class out of COVID, and that's the Underhills, the Shields, the Cotes, the Lamanis. That's one of our best classes, and that was clear of the COVID stuff, and so as we get to a 5 years of that, great. And some of that's the weird one for me with the transfer portals and all the different stuff in this world, that maybe that's a different, we're entering a brave new era where that's maybe less true than it used to be. I think the hard work is always going to be true, and the consistency will always help you. But now with some of this other stuff in there's some shortcuts and some things that can bottom out regardless of some of that stuff. But we'll figure these Generation Z's out one way or the other.
Well, even just speaking on that, again, one of my all-time favorites. I don't even know if you remember this one, but it was directly after the 2011 Vanier. You got an interview, somebody sticks a microphone in your face, and the thing that you say that stuck with me was, I kind of wish we were playing another team after this. We were having so much fun doing what we were doing here after the 2011 Vanier. You made it to the mountaintop, and you're looking around thinking, surely there's another team that wants to play us or do something else. And I think that was very indicative of that team and how we just wanted to keep going to work and keep doing our thing. But again, talking about the classes that you're mentioning here, and it's a huge testament to yourself, Coach Hopkins, and the rest of that coaching staff and the guys that you've brought in. You had 2 notable transfers out in Mitchell Price and in Jackson Taylor in particular. And I had a lot of people coming up to me, I'm sure up to yourself, but up to me saying, oh, wow, Mitch Price is gone, Jackson Taylor's gone. How do you feel about this? What a blow for your Marauders and everything. And I'm going, I'm not that concerned. 2 high quality, high caliber players, absolutely, in both of their respective fronts. Yeah. But you've got Greg Palmer, you've got a Dom Lamani on that defensive line, you've got a Judah on that the wide receiver room that hasn't really had a chance to come out here, and you've got phenomenal players to the point where that class and the group of players that you have here is not defined by 1 or 2 players. It's the growth of the group. And I just think it's so exciting to see that, whereas last year, so many questions around, Keegan Hall leaving, what does this mean? Now you have another 2 guys that move on for whatever reasons, and we're going, that's okay. We've seen this before from this exact last year. They're going into another year now. And I think, again, it just speaks to the testament of what you guys are doing and what you're building here, that you could have those guys leave and to not lose a step, but to look like you're operating at the very highest of levels here.
Yeah, I mean, again, Coach Hopkins and the recruiting classes have been what they need to be. And so in each case, they're all wonderful human beings, and I've enjoyed working with all of them. There's personal and things that they needed a fresh start, and they're going to pursue academically and different things, and wish them nothing but the best. And big fans of theirs. 7 of the 8 weeks of an OUA season, if they're staying in conference, 100%. The healthiest rooms are going to be competitive, and no one individual can change that. And so that's what we're trying to build. I've got some young receivers that loved. Everett Reed is preparing for the CFL, so he's not there. Aiden Nemes, my one vet, holding down the fort, and the kids, frankly, we're more athletic than we were last year, but even though we're way younger. And so they just need to get the reps, and the reps are there. And so it just competitive rooms and keep that's the way to make sure these you can really support young men in whatever they've decided they need to do, because at the end of the day, your football team's going to be competitive regardless.
And, Coach, I'm glad Tom brought up the piece on the transfer aspect, because it's obviously something that, we're dealing with more so now at the university level. Shoot, even the high school level, I hear these kids talk about it. You think the Gen Zs are a handful. Wait till you meet the Gen Alphas. But, as I always say with the kids in my school, when they talk about, oh, so-and-so's leaving, so-and-so, it's like, well, if they don't want to be part of what we're doing here, that's fine. They can go somewhere else. We want the people who want to be here. So the last thing I want to ask you, Coach, and again, it's been so great having you on and sharing your wisdom and what you've been doing with this team and everything over your years with McMaster, is if you've developed it for this upcoming year, what are those, coaches love slogans, coaches love mottos. What are those kind of key ideas that, you and your coaching staff, if you've got to that stage, some people wait till you see, who's all back in training camp and things like that. But what are some of the ideas that have been percolating of what is going to define this McMaster Marauders team as far as that culture piece, the core values, the core tenets that you believe in going into this 2026-27 year?
Yeah, I feel like there's a whole bunch of us that have been getting to the playoffs that are on the cusp of being considered a contender for that Yates Cup. And for me, I always want to shy away. I don't think I want us to prove anything to Western, Laurier, Queens. If we're trying to prove to them stuff, I think it's way more important to prove to ourselves. And so I want to kind of stay in our lane and just focus on us reaching our full potential. And I think we've seen enough of this spring and this winter that we believe if we hold each other accountable and the only people whose opinions we care about is each other, we got a chance. And so that Windsor game will be a good one for us. I don't think we've been 1-0 for a few years here. And if we can have a fast start, I think the belief that the Yates Cup, the person we got to deal with is looking right back at us in the mirror and trust the guys around us, and we'll have we're going to have a fun year. Tom knows. I think it's the bandwagon people that jump on board and tell you how great you've done good things. I'm going to tell them how great they are before they do some good things.
Mm-hmm. I can't leave here without asking you a little bit about our hometown and just the surrounding areas in here. We've had a lot of conversations with some of the folks. When we had Corey Grant on, we talked about what that Ottawa recruiting class is like of the Ottawa region. In my mind, again, I'm biased, but that Golden Horseshoe area, especially in the Hamiltons, in terms of recruiting, is some of the very best that you could find across the country, and you are situated in the perfect spot. And obviously, you can go through the names, Isaiah Shields, Adam Woods, Luke Sparizzi, all of those guys that we're talking about who are prominent, who are all from the Hamilton region. If anything, obviously in the past 15 or so years, recruiting, if anything, has only gotten better and better, and people are doing more with it, and regional recruiters and everything else. Whereas I don't necessarily want to say we were an unknown gem by any means, but like back in my day, at least, and certainly back in your day, with the number of people coming out of that damn school in Nelson and everywhere else, you didn't see as many coaches necessarily around. But I had the opportunity to coach at my alma mater last year at Assumption, and you're seeing 20 different coaches there all watching these high school games, and now you've getting more and more intruders into your own backyard. Right. So how do you keep the folks in your backyard at home and say, you could go across the country and try to find something, but you've got everything you want right here, and mom and dad are just down the road if you want to pop home for a Sunday meal?
I mean, that one's an easy question for me. I have the best support staff in the country. When your special teams coordinator is Rob Underhill, who's the U18 coach, who is handing out helmets to the little guys in minor football all the way through. And if that's not enough, he's also the BR defensive coordinator, and they win the city championship. That, like, that's great. And then shoulder to shoulder with him, our DB coach is Karche Shields, who is the defensive coordinator of the U18 team, is the defensive coordinator at Bishop Tonus, and has been handing out HFA, Hamilton football helmets to little guys all the way through. My son's first football experience, Karche Shields is the head coach when he's 6 years old. And the fact that he loves football because the first experience is so authentic, and the brotherhood of a football room when you're 6, he's a fan of the sport forever. That's impactful. Jamie Barisi is a supply teacher that's everywhere. And he I mean, everywhere. I don't know how many recruits. I saw him at my high school today. I'm like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And so I could go on and across the board. They're in the community. And it's the least sexiest choice to stay home. But the values and morals and the trust that they've garnered from people that wear maroon is different. And yes, you can come watch them and talk to them, and it's kind of cool that they're good football players. End of the day, gut feel place you're going to call home is where you're going to go. And that's not about stadiums or rings. That's about human beings. And we win a lot of those ties because you trust the men in the community that you've met prior to coming.
Well, the stadium kind of matters a little bit because take it from someone going into Ron Joyce as the opponent. That's a tough place to play, and it is certainly one of the many home field advantages and what makes Hamilton as a football community and McMaster as a school historically and contemporarily one of the places to be. He is the head coach of the McMaster Marauders. Coach Stef Ptaszek, and coach, as much as I bust Tom's you-know-whats for the McMaster thing, if it's only for one thing, it's to harken back to that time when Guelph and Mac were the kings of the OUA. With what you're doing with the program right now, all your coaches, all your staff, and then what that team up the road that I love so much is doing right now, it looks like we're getting back to that place where whether you call it still the Battle of Highway 6 or as we're trying to rebrand the At the 55 Bowl, that is the crown jewel of OUA football. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all that you've done for the sport of football, for the McMaster Marauders, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man. I love that you did that ride. We'll have double or nothing next year.
Well, I'm still going to bet against you. I'll tell you that right now. Amazing. Thank you so much to Coach P. Our next journey has taken us, I believe, to Can West. So we'll see you right here next week at the 55.